Hi, welcome to this Corbettmaths video. In this video, we're going to go through the video solutions to the Quadratic Formula practice questions. If you need any extra help with the Quadratic Formula, if you go to corbettmaths.com/contents and go down to video number 267, there's a dedicated video tutorial there on the Quadratic Formula. Alternatively, you can scan this QR code and it'll bring you straight to it. But in this video, we're going to focus on the video solutions to the Quadratic Formula practice questions, so let's get started. So question number one. Question number one says, write down the Quadratic Formula. So the quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. And that's it. That's the quadratic formula. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. Okay, let's have a look at question number two. So question number two says, solve the equation x squared plus 5x plus 1 equals 0, and to give your answers to one decimal place. So a hint in this question that you're going to be using the quadratic formula is the fact that you've been asked to give your answers to one decimal place. And let's have a look at the equation we've been given. So equals 0, that's fantastic. And remember, the quadratic formula is used whenever you've got quadratics in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So the a is going to be the coefficient of the x squared, the number in front of the x squared. So in this case, a is equal to 1 because it's 1x squared, so a equals 1. B is the coefficient of x, the number in front of x, so b is equal to 5. And c is the number on the end, the constant, so that's going to be plus 1, so c is equal to 1. So now we're going to substitute those values into the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. So let's substitute those values into the quadratic formula. So x equals negative b, so b is 5, so negative b will be negative 5, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so that's going to be 5 squared, minus 4ac. Now I like to put this in brackets, so 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 1. Okay, so that's the 4ac, 4 times a times c, all divided by 2a. And a is equal to 1, so 2a would be equal to 2. So we've now got x is equal to negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 5 squared minus 4 times 1 times 1 all divided by 2. So x is equal to, so minus 5 plus or minus the square root of, so let's focus on the bit under the square root sign. So we've got 5 squared, that's 25, and then we've got subtract 4 times 1 times 1. So 4 times 1 is 4 times 1 is 4, so subtract 4, all divided by 2. So we've got x equals negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 25 minus 4 over 2. Now 25 minus 4 is 21, so x is equal to minus 5 plus or minus the square root of 21 over 2. Now here we're going to be getting two solutions, so x equals something or x equals something else. And we've got x is equal to negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 21 over 2. So we've got negative 5, now we've got this plus or minus symbol. That means negative 5 plus the square root of 21, and then we've got negative 5 minus the square root of 21 over 2. So let's write that out. We've got x equals, and we've got negative 5, and instead of writing the plus or minus sign, we're going to write it once with a plus sign, so plus the square root of 21 over 2, or x equals, and we're going to do the same thing again, but instead of a plus sign with a minus sign, so minus 5 minus the square root of 21 over 2. So we've got our two possible solutions. Now what we need to do is just work it out. Now it's a calculator question, so we can just type this in our calculator. We can just do x equals, so we can just do minus 5 plus the square root of 21 over 2. And whenever we press equals, we get that's equal to negative 0.2087 and so on. And we just need to give our answer to one decimal place. So x will be equal to negative 0.2. So that's one of our possible solutions. Or another solution would be, remember there's two values for x, it would satisfy this equation, so it's this one or this one. So in this case, we've got x is equal to, and we're just going to type this into our calculator, minus 5 minus the square root of 21 over 2. That's equal to minus 4.791 and so on. And we need to give our answer to one decimal place, so that will be x is equal to one decimal place, minus 4.8. So we've got the x is equal to minus 0.2 or x is equal to minus 4.8. Both of those values will satisfy this equation. So there are two solutions. So that's it, so minus 0.2 or minus 4.8. Okay, let's have a look at question number 3. So question number 3, we've been asked to solve the equation 2x squared plus 6x plus 1 equals 0, and to give our answers to two decimal places. So in this case, we've got our quadratic, and we've got it's equal to 0, so that's fantastic. We've got a is equal to 2, we've got b is equal to 6, and we've got c is equal to 1. And the quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. So let's substitute our values into the quadratic formula. So we're going to get x is equal to negative b, so that's negative 6, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so that's going to be 6 squared, minus, and I like to put this bit in brackets, 4ac, so that's 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is 1. And then we're going to divide that by 2a, and a is equal to 2, so 2 times 2 is equal to 4. So we've got x is equal to negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared minus 4 times 2 times 1, all divided by 4. So that means that x is equal to, let's work out the bit under the square root sign. So we've got negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared, that's 36, subtract 4 times 2 times 1, 4 times 2 is 8, times 1 is 8, all divided by 4. So we've got that x is equal to negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 minus 8 over 4. Now 36 minus 8 is 28, so that means that x is equal to negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 28 divided by 4. So now at this point we've got x is equal to negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 28 divided by 4. So let's get our two possible solutions. That means that either x is equal to negative 6 plus the square root of 28 divided by 4, or another solution would be x is equal to negative 6 minus the square root of 28 divided by 4. So there are two solutions, this solution and this solution. So x equal to that or that. So now we just need to work this out. So it's a calculator question, so let's just type it into our calculator. X is equal to negative 0.17712 and so on, or in this case just changing the plus sign to a subtract, so that would be equal to x is equal to negative 2.8228 and so on. And we've been asked to give our answers to two decimal places. That means that either x is equal to negative 0.18 because we've got 78, so we're going to round up, or x is equal to negative 2.8. And then if we have a look, we've got 2, so it's going to be 2. So there's our two possible solutions, that x is equal to negative 0.18 or x is equal to negative 2.82. So there are two solutions to this equation. Okay, let's have a look at question number 4. So question number 4, we've been asked to solve the equation 4x squared plus x minus 7 is equal to 0 and to give our answers to two decimal places. So a in this case now equals 0, that's great. A is equal to 4. B is equal to, now we've got x, that's the same as 1x, so b is equal to 1, and c is equal to negative 7. So we've got our values for a, b, and c. Let's write down the quadratic formula. X is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. So let's substitute our values into the quadratic formula and see what we get. So we've got x is equal to negative b, now b is equal to 1, so it's going to be negative 1 plus or minus the square root of, we've then got b squared, so it's going to be 1 squared. Now I like to put this in brackets, 4 times a, which is 4, times c, which is negative 7. And that's all divided by 2a, and a is equal to 4, so 2 times a is equal to 8, so over 8. So that means we've got x is equal to negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 squared minus 4 times negative 7, all divided by 8. So x is equal to negative 1 plus or minus, now let's focus on the bit under the square root sign. We've got 1 squared, that's 1. And then we've got minus, and let's work out what's inside the bracket. 4 times negative 7. Well, 4 times negative 7 is equal to negative 112. And then close brackets, all divided by 8. So we've now got that x is equal to negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 minus 112 over 8. So let's just simplify what's under the square root sign. So we've got x is equal to negative 1 plus or minus the square root of. Now 1 minus 112, that means we're going to add 112, so that's 113 over 8. Now we need to work out our two solutions because we've got the plus or minus. So we've got x is equal to negative 1 plus the square root of 113 over 8, or we've got x is equal to negative 1 minus the square root of 113 over 8. So there are two possible solutions. Now we just need to work them out. So x is equal to, and on my calculator, is equal to 1.20376 and so on. Or another solution would be x is equal to minus 1.45376 and so on. And we've been asked to give our answers to two decimal places. That means that either x is equal to 1.20, so 1.20 to two decimal places, or in this case, we've been asked to give this number to two decimal places. That would be minus 1 point, and then we've got 453, so it's going to be 45, so minus 1.45. So answer would be x is equal to 1.20 or x is equal to negative 1.45. So there are two solutions, and that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 5. So this time we've been asked to solve the equation x squared minus 2x minus 9 equals 0 and to give our answers to two decimal places. So here a is equal to 1, b is equal to negative 2, and c is equal to negative 9. So we've got our values for a, b, and c. Let's substitute them into the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. So that means that x is equal to negative b. Now b was negative already, so it's going to now be positive because negative b will make it positive. So 2 plus or minus the square root of, then we've got b squared, so we've got minus 2 squared, and then we've got minus 4ac, and I like to put that in brackets, 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 9, all divided by 2a, and a was equal to 1, so 2a would be 2. So we've got x is equal to 2 plus or minus the square root of, now negative 2 squared, a negative times a negative is a positive, so negative 2 times a negative 2 is 4, so we've got 4 minus, and then let's work out what's inside of our bracket. 4 times 1 is 4, times minus 9 would be minus 36. So minus 36, close brackets, all divided by 2a, which is 2. So that would be, and let's simplify what's under the square root sign. We've got 2 plus or minus the square root of, and we've got 4 minus 36. It's going to be 4 plus 36, which is 40, so the square root of 40, all divided by 2. So we've now got that x is equal to 2 plus or minus the square root of 40 over 2. So let's get our two possible solutions. So we've got x is equal to 2 plus the square root of 40 over 2, or x is equal to 2 minus the square root of 40 over 2. So we've got our two possible solutions. Let's work out this one to begin with. So 2 plus the square root of 40 divided by 2 is equal to 4.162277 and so on. Or in this case where we've got 2 minus the square root of 40, so let's change that plus sign to take away or subtract, and that's equal to negative 2.16227 and so on. And we've been asked to give our answers to two decimal places. So in this case, that would be 4.16, so 4.16. Or in this case, the two decimal places would be negative 2.16. So there's our two solutions. X is equal to 4.16 or x is equal to negative 2.16. And that's it. So let's have a look at our next question. We've got question number 6. I've been asked to solve the quadratic equation 7x squared minus 25x plus 2 equals 0, and to give our answers to two decimal places. So we've got a, it's equal to 0, so that's great. A is equal to 7, b is equal to negative 25, and c is equal to 2. So let's substitute those into the quadratic formula. So we've got x equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. So x is equal to negative b. Now b is already negative, so we're going to have 25 plus or minus the square root of b squared, so that's minus 25 or negative 25 squared minus 4ac. I like to put this in brackets, so 4 times a, which is 7, times c, which is 2, close brackets, all divided by 2a. And a is equal to 7, so 2a would be 14. So we've got x is equal to 25 plus or minus, and let's simplify what's under our square root sign. So we then got negative 25 squared, and it's a negative times a negative, and a negative times a negative is a positive, and 25 times 25 is 625. Subtract, and then in brackets we've got 4 times 7 times 2. 4 times 7 is 28, times 2 would be 56. And then close brackets, and that's all divided by 2a, which is 14. So now let's simplify what's under the square root sign here. So we've got x is equal to 25 plus or minus the square root of. So we've got 625 subtract 56. And 625 subtract 56 is equal to 569. And that's all divided by 2a, which is 14. So we've now got x is equal to 25 plus the square root of 569 over 14, or x is equal to 25 minus the square root of 569 over 14. So let's work that out and see what we get. So x equals, or x equals. So here we've got x is equal to 3.48955 and so on. And here we've got x is equal to, just changing the plus sign to a subtract, is equal to 0.08187 and so on. And we've been asked to give our answers to two decimal places. So x is equal to 3.49 to two decimal places, or x equals 0.08 to two decimal places. So there's our two solutions. The x is equal to 3.49 and x is equal to 0.08. Okay, let's have a look at our next question. Okay, so question number 7. We've been asked to solve the equation 3x squared plus 10x plus 5 equals 7. Now in this case, it's not equal to 0, it's equal to 7. So what we need to do is we need to get rid of that 7. We need to make it 0. So let's subtract 7 from both sides. So take away 7 and take away 7. And if we take away 7 from both sides, on the left-hand side, we'd have 3x squared plus 10x x. And then we had 5, we're taking away 7, so that'd be minus 2. And then that equals, and on the right hand side, 0. So that means that if we take 7 away from both sides, we get 3x squared plus 10x minus 2 equals 0. And now that equals 0, so if we now solve this, we'll get our solutions. So that means that a is equal to 3, b is equal to 10, and c is equal to negative 2. So let's substitute those values into the quadratic formula. So x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. So that means that x is equal to negative b, now b is equal to 10, so it's going to be negative 10 plus or minus the square root of b squared, that's going to be 10 squared, subtract 4ac, so in brackets 4, times a, which is 3, times c, which is negative 2, close brackets. And that's all divided by 2a. And a is equal to 3, so 2 times 3 is equal to 6. So that means that x is equal to negative 10 plus or minus the square root of, and let's work out some of this. So we've got 10 squared, that's 100. Subtract, and then in brackets we've got 4 times 3 times negative 2. Well, 4 times 3 is 12, times negative 2 would be negative 24. And that's all divided by 6. Now let's simplify what's under the square root sign here. So we're going to have x is equal to negative 10 plus or minus the square root of, and we've got 100 minus 24. So that means 100 plus 24, which would be 124. All divided by 2a, which is 6. So then if we get our two solutions, the x is equal to negative 10 plus the square root of 124 divided by 6, or x is equal to minus 10 minus the square root of 124 over 6. And then if we work this out in our calculator, we get x is equal to 0.189254 and so on, or x is equal to minus 3.5225 and so on. I've been asked to give our answers to two decimal places, so that means that x is equal to 0.19 or x is equal to minus 3.5, and then we've got 2, so 2. And that's it. So there are two possible solutions. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 8. Now, question number 8, we've been asked to solve the equation 11x squared equals 7 minus 2x. Now, in this case, it's definitely not equal to 0, so we need to have it quadratic equals 0. So let's get everything over to the left-hand side. So let's get rid of this 7 by taking away 7 from both sides, and let's get rid of this minus 2x by adding 2x to both sides. So we've got 11x squared equals 7 minus 2x. I'm going to start off by adding 2x to both sides, so add 2x and add 2x. So the left hand side will become 11x squared plus 2x equals 7. Now we want it to equal 0, so we don't want the 7 here, so let's take away 7 and take away 7. So we're going to get 11x squared plus 2x minus 7 equals 0. So we've got our quadratic now and it equals 0. So we now know that a is equal to 11, b is equal to 2, and c is equal to negative 7. So we've got our values for a, b, and c. We can now substitute them into the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. So it means that x is equal to negative b, well b is 2, so negative b would be negative 2 plus or minus the square root of b squared, which would be 2 squared, minus, and then we've got 4ac. I like to put that on a bracket, so 4 times a, which is 11, times c, which is negative 7. And then close brackets. And that's all divided by 2a. A was equal to 11, so it's going to be divided by 22. Now let's simplify what's under the square root sign. So we've got x is equal to negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared is 4, and then we've got minus, and then inside the brackets we had 4 times 11 times negative 7, which is equal to minus 308. And then that's all over 22. Now let's simplify what's under the square root sign. So we've got x is equal to negative 2 plus or minus the square root of. So we've then got 4 minus 308. So it's going to be 4 plus 308, which should be 312 divided by 22. Now that means that either x is equal to negative 2 plus the square root of 312 over 22, or x is equal to negative 2 minus the square root of 312 over 22. So let's work this one out to begin with. So x is equal to 0.71197 and so on, or negative 0.8937 and so on. Now we've been asked to give our answers to two decimal places, so let's round these to two decimal places. X is going to be equal to, in this case, 0.71, Or in this case, x is equal to negative 0. And we had 893, so it's going to be 89. And that's our two solutions, that either x is equal to 0.71 or x is equal to negative 0.89. And that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 9. So question number 9, we've been asked to solve the equation 12x squared minus 13x plus 4 equals 13x minus 5x plus 1. And we've been asked to give our answers to one decimal place. So whenever we're solving a quadratic, it's great if we can have it equal to 0. So that means we want to bring all the terms over to one side and leave 0 on one side. Now if we have a look here, we've got 12x squared and 13x squared. I'm actually going to then make the left hand side here 0 and bring everything over to the right hand side. So we had 12x squared minus 13x plus 4 is equal to 13x squared minus 5x plus 1. Now I'm going to make the left hand side 0 here, so I'm going to subtract 12x squared from both sides, and I'm doing that because I know that if I subtract 12x squared from the 13x squared, that's going to be positive, so I'm making sure that my x squared term is positive. It's okay if you don't have the other way around, you could then just bring everything back to the other side. So if we take 12x squared away from both sides, our left hand side would just become minus 13x plus 4, and on our right hand side we had 13x squared, we're taking away 12x squared, so it's going to be x squared, and we've still got our minus 5x plus 1. Now we want it to be equal to 0 on the left hand side, so let's add 13x's to both sides. So let's add 13x to both sides, so add 13x and add 13x. So our left hand side would just become 4, and on our right hand side, so 4, and on our right hand side we have x squared. We had minus 5x plus 13x. Now minus 5 plus 13 is 8, so it's going to be plus 8x, and then we've still got our plus 1. Now we want the left hand side to be equal to 0, so let's take 4 away from both sides, so take away 4 and take away 4. So our left hand side would just be left with 0, and on our right hand side we're going to have x squared plus 8x, and we had 1 take away 4, that's going to be minus 3. So now we've got a nice quadratic. We had something really complicated, and now we've just got a nice quadratic we want to solve. Now, it'd be even nicer if we could factorize it, but we can't, so we're going to have to use the quadratic formula, and the clue is the fact that it says give our answers to one decimal place. So we know that a is equal to 1, we know that b is equal to 8, and we know that c is equal to negative 3. So let's substitute those values into the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula is x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. So let's substitute in those values. So we've got x is equal to negative b, so it's going to be minus 8 plus or minus the square root of. We've then got b squared, so it's going to be 8 squared, and 8 squared 64. Subtract 4ac, and in a bracket we've got 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 3. And that's all divided by 2a. Now, if we simplify what's inside the brackets, we're going to have x is equal to negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 64 minus, and then in our bracket we had 4 times 1, which is 4, times negative 3, which is negative 12. And that's all over. Now, actually, I should have substituted in the a here. I should have substituted in the a here and got 2 times 1, which is 2. So 2a would be equal to 2. And then we've got underneath that square root sign, we've got minus 8 plus or minus the square root of 64 minus minus 12. That's going to be 64 plus 12, which is 76 over 2. Now let's write out our two solutions. That means that either x is equal to minus 8 plus the square root of 76 over 2, or x is equal to minus 8 minus the square root of 76 over 2. So let's work out both of these and see what we get. So x is equal to 0.35889 and so on. Or in this case, if we change that plus sign to a minus sign, so take away, we get that's equal to x is equal to minus 8.358 and so on. Now, I've been asked to give our answers to one decimal place, so in this case, x would be equal to 0.4, or in this case, or x is equal to minus 8 and we've got 35, so it's going to be minus 8.4. So our two solutions would be x is equal to 0.4, or x is equal to minus 8.4. That's it. Okay, so let's have a look at our next question, question number 10. So question number 10, we were told that a rectangular field is 15 meters longer than it is wide, and the area of the field is 800 meters squared, or 800 square meters. We've been asked to work out the length of the field and to give our answer to one decimal place. So I've drawn a sketch. It may not be very accurate, but it's just a sketch of a rectangular field, and we're told that the length is 15 meters longer than it is wide. So let's call its width x, and if it's 15 meters longer, that means its length would be x plus 15. So that's the width and the length of the field. And we know that the area of the field is 800 meters squared. So that's the field, and we've been asked to work out the length of the field. So let's create an equation. Let's form an equation. We know that for a rectangle, the area is the length times the width. So if we multiply the width and the length together, we'll get the area. So the width is x and the length is x plus 15. So if we multiply those two together, we get that's equal to 800. Now if we expand our brackets, we get x times x is x squared, and then we've got x times 15, so it'll be plus 15x, and that's equal to 800. Now we want this to equal 0, so let's take 800 away from both sides of our equation. So take away 800 and take away 800. On our left hand side, we'll have x squared plus 15x minus 800, and that's equal to 0. So now we've got an equation, we just need to solve it. So we know a is equal to 1, b is equal to 15, and c is equal to minus 800. So let's substitute those values into the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So that means that x is equal to negative b, so b was 15, so it's going to be negative 15, plus or minus the square root of b squared, well 15 squared is 15 times 15, which is 225, minus 4ac. So let's put that in brackets, 4 times 1 times negative 800. And then close brackets and put our square root sign over the top. And that's all over 2a, and a was equal to 1, so 2a is equal to 2. So now we need to simplify this. So we've got x is equal to negative 15 plus or minus the square root of, and we've got 225 subtract, and then if we work out what's inside the bracket here, we've got 4 times 1, which is 4, times minus 800 will be minus 3,200, and that's all over 2. So now if we simplify what's under the square root sign, we're going to get x is equal to minus 15 plus or minus the square root of. Now 225 minus 3,200 would be 3,425, because it means we're going to be adding it on, all over 2. And now we just need to work this out. So we're going to do x is equal to minus 15 plus the square root of 3,425 divided by 2, and we'll get that answer, x equals, or we'll have x is equal to minus 15 minus the square root of 3,425 over 2, and we'll get that answer as well, and see what we get. That's equal to 21.7617 and so on meters for x, the width of the field. Or in this case, if we change that plus sign to a minus sign, we get that's equal to, if we press equals, that's equal to minus 36.7617 and so on meters. Now that actually doesn't make sense, because we're finding the width of the field here, and the width of the field can't be minus 36 meters. It doesn't make sense. So that cannot be a solution. So this is going to be our solution for x. So x is equal to 21.7617 and so on meters. Now in this question, we've been asked to find the length of the field. So we've found x, the width of the field. So the width of the field is 21.7617 and so on. But the length of the field was 15 meters longer, so we need to add on 15. So that means our answer would be 36.7617 and so on meters. And we've been asked to give our answer to one decimal place, so that'll be 36.8 meters. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 11. So question number 11, we've been given this triangle, and we've been told, shown above is a right angle triangle. So this is a right angle triangle, and it's got two shorter sides. One of them is x minus 2 centimeters, and the other one is x plus 5 centimeters. And the length of the hypotenuse is 2x plus 1 centimeters. And we've been asked to show that x squared minus x minus 14 is equal to 0. So here we've got a right angle triangle, so what we're going to do is we're going to use Pythagoras' theorem, and then what we'll do is bring everything over to one side, and hopefully we'll get this. So let's label our sides A, B and C. So I've labelled A being the shortest, B being the next shortest, and C being the largest. Now A and B, it doesn't actually matter which way around you label those, but C has to be the hypotenuse, and because it's right opposite the right angle, that's the hypotenuse. So then Pythagoras' theorem is A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So let's replace A, B and C with x minus 2, x plus 5 and 2x plus 1. So let's do that. So we're going to have, instead of A squared, it'll be x minus 2, close bracket squared, plus, and then instead of b squared, it's going to be x plus 5, close bracket squared, and then instead of c squared, it's going to be 2x plus 1, close bracket squared. So we've got x minus 2 squared plus x plus 5 squared equals 2x plus 1 squared, and because it's a right angle triangle, it'll have to satisfy Pythagoras' theorem. So let's expand our brackets. So remember, whenever we square a bracket, we multiply by itself, so it's going to be x minus 2 bracket x minus 2 plus x plus 5 x plus 5, and then that equals 2x plus 1 multiplied by itself, 2x plus 1. Now we just need to expand our brackets. So if we expand this pair of brackets, we'd get x squared minus 2x plus 4. So the minus 2x would be minus 4x. That'll be x squared minus 4x plus 4. And so that's what we get whenever we expand these brackets. Our next pair of brackets, we're going to multiply these and we'll get x times x is x squared, so plus, let's just put those in brackets for the moment. So we've got x squared, and then we're going to do x times 5, and 5 times x, that's plus 10x, and then we've got plus 25. And then on our right hand side, we're going to have that's equal to 2x times 2x is 4x squared. We'll have 2x times 1 and 1 times 2x, that's going to be 4x altogether. And finally, 1 times 1 is equal to 1. So we've got x squared minus 4x plus 4 plus x squared plus 10x plus 25 is equal to 4x squared plus 4x plus 1. So now let's simplify this left hand side. So we're just adding these together. So x squared plus x squared would be 2x squared. We've got minus 4x plus 10x, so minus 4x plus 10x would be 6x, so plus 6x. And finally, 4 plus 25, 4 plus 25 is 29, so plus 29. And that's equal to, on our right hand side, we've got 4x squared plus 4x plus 1. Now ideally we'd like this to equal 0, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take away everything from the left hand side here so that we get 0 equals, because we've got 2x squared and 4x squared. To me it makes sense to leave the x squareds on the right hand side, so let's bring everything over to the right hand side. So let's take away 2x squared from both sides, and if we take away 2x squared from both sides, let's go up here and see what we get. Let's write it out again. 2x squared plus 6x plus 29 equals 4x squared plus 4x plus 1. So if we take away 2x squared from both sides, so take away 2x squared and take away 2x squared, on our left hand side we'll just be left with 6x plus 29, and on our right hand side we'll have 2x squared plus 4x plus 1. Now we want this to equal 0 on the left hand side, so now let's take away 6x from that side and 6x from the right hand side as well. So on the left hand side we'll be left with 29, and that's equal to 2x squared. Now we had 4x take away 6x, well 4x take away 6x is minus 2x, and then we've still got our plus 1. And finally we want this to equal 0, so let's take away 29 and take away 29 and see what we get. 29 take away 29 is 0, and on our right hand side we've got 2x squared minus 2x. Now we had 1, we're taking away 29, so it's going to be minus 28. So let's have a look and see what we've got. So we've got 0 equals 2x squared minus 2x minus 28. Now if we have a look and see what we're trying to get, we've got x squared minus x minus 14. Now that's close. If we just divide our whole equation through by 2, if we just divide everything by 2, the left hand side and the right hand side, let's see what we get. 0 divided by 2 is 0. And then on our right hand side, we're going to divide everything by 2, so that'll be x squared minus x minus 14. And that's what we wanted, just the other way around, so we can turn it around if we want. X squared minus x minus 14 equals 0. So that's it. So we've been asked to show that x squared minus x minus 14 equals 0, and we've done that. Okay, part B. Part B says to find x. That means we want to solve this equation. So to solve this equation, we could try and factorize it, but we probably won't. We could use completing the square, or in this case, we're going to use the quadratic formula. So we've got a is equal to 1, so a is equal to 1. B is equal to minus 1, so B is equal to minus 1, and C is equal to minus 14, so C is equal to minus 14. So we've got our values for A, B, and C. Now let's write down the quadratic formula. That's x equals minus B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC, all divided by 2a. So let's substitute in the values for A, B, and C. So A is equal to 1, B is equal to minus 1, and C is equal to minus 14. So we're going to have x equals, now we've got minus B. Now B was minus 1, so minus 1 would be 1, plus or minus the square root of, and then we've got b squared, which would be minus 1 squared, and then take away 4ac. Now I like to put that on a bracket, so 4 times a, which is 1, multiplied by c, which is minus 14, close brackets, and let's just extend our square root sign. And that's all over 2a, and a is equal to 1, and 2 times 1 is equal to 2. So now we've got that x is equal to 1 plus or minus the square root of minus 1 squared minus 4 times 1 times minus 14, all divided by 2. So now if we simplify what's under the square root, that'll be x is equal to 1 plus or minus the square root of. Now we've got minus 1 squared, well negative 1 times negative 1 is 1, and then we've got take away, and then what's inside the brackets? Well, we've got 4 times 1, which is 4, times minus 14, which would be minus 56, close brackets, and that's all divided by 2. Now if we simplify this, we've got 1 minus minus 56, so that's going to be 1 plus 56, which is 57, so we're going to have x is equal to 1 plus or minus the square root of 57 over 2. And now we then can write out our two solutions, that either x is equal to 1 plus the square root of 57 divided by 2, or x is equal to 1 minus the square root of 57 divided by 2. And whenever we work those out, let's see what we get. So whenever we work out 1 plus the square root of 57 divided by 2, That's equal to 4.2749 and so on. And here, if we change the plus sign to a minus sign, so do one take away the square root of 57 divided by 2, that's equal to minus 3.2749 and so on. So we've got our two values for x. Now, if we go back up to the question, we've got this length here, which is x minus 2. Now, if x is a negative number and we take away 2, that means this would be a negative length, which wouldn't make sense. So that means that this can't be a solution. So that means that x will have to be equal to 4.2749 and so on. And let's give our answer to 3 decimal places. So that's going to be 4.275 centimeters to 3 decimal places to 3 decimal places. And that's it. Okay, so let's have a look at question number 12. So question number 12 says, solve, given your answers to 2 decimal places. And we've got 7 over m plus 9 equals m plus 10. So whenever we want to solve this, well, we don't want to have the m on the denominator here. So let's multiply both sides by m plus 9. So let's multiply the left-hand side by m plus 9. And let's multiply the right-hand side by m plus 9. And we're doing that to get rid of the m off the denominator here. Actually, I'll get rid of the whole denominator. So we've got 7 divided by m plus 9. We want to get rid of the divide by m plus 9, so we've timesed it by m plus 9, so we'd just be left with 7 on the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side, we had m plus 10. I'm just going to put that in a bracket, and we're going to multiply that by m plus 9. So we've now got 7 equals m plus 10 times m plus 9. So let's expand our bracket, so it's going to be 7 equals, so that'd be m squared plus, and then we've done n times m, so m times 9 will be plus 9m, plus 10m, and then we've got 10 times 9, which would be 90. So expanding our brackets would be m squared plus 9m plus 10m plus 90. Now let's simplify this, so we'll have 7 equals m squared plus, and then we've got 9m plus 10m, which is 19m plus 90. And we want this to equal 0, so let's take away 7 from both sides to get 0 equals m squared plus 19m plus 83. So we've got our equation, we just need to solve it now. And because the question says to give our answers to 2 decimal places, it's probably going to be a quadratic formula question. So let's do that. So let's actually just move this over a bit. So we've got our values for a, b, and c. A is equal to 1, b is equal to 19, and c is equal to 83. So we've now got our values for a, b, and c. Let's substitute them into the quadratic formula. Now this equation was in terms of m. We had 0 equals m squared plus 19m plus 83. So instead of writing x equals, I'm going to write m equals. And then I've got minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. So let's substitute our values in. So we've got m is equal to minus b, so it's going to be minus 19 plus or minus the square root of, and then instead of b squared, we're going to have 19 squared minus, and then in brackets 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 83, close brackets, and then extend our square root up, and that's all divided by 2a, which would be equal to 2. So that means that m is equal to minus 19 plus or minus the square root of. Now 19 times 19 is 361. Subtract, and then we've got 4 times 1 times 83, and 4 times 1 times 83 is equal to 332. And that's all divided by 2. So now that means m is equal to minus 19 plus or minus the square root of, and 361 take away 332 is equal to 29, all divided by 2. So now we've got what m is. It's either minus 19 plus the square root of 29 over 2, or minus 19 minus the square root of 29 over 2. So now let's find our 2 possible solutions for m. So m is equal to either minus 19 plus the square root of 29 over 2, or m is equal to minus 19 minus the square root of 29 over 2. Now in this case, if we work this out in our calculator, we get m is equal to, and we'll do minus 19 plus the square root of 29 divided by 2, and that's equal to, m is equal to minus 6.80741 and so on. Or in this case, if we change that plus sign here to a minus sign, we get that's equal to minus 12.1925 and so on. Now we've got our 2 possible solutions for m, and we've been asked to give our answers to 2 decimal places. So either m is going to be minus 6.81, or m is equal to minus 12.19. And there are 2 possible solutions. Okay, let's have a look at question number 13. So question number 13 says, shown is a triangle with an area of 19 centimeters squared. And we've got this triangle, and we've got its base, which is x plus 6 centimeters, and we've got its height, which is x plus 5 centimeters. And we've been asked to find the value of x. So we've been given its area, so that means half the base times the height is equal to 19. So that means that half the base, which is equal to x plus 6, times the height, which is x plus 5, would be equal to 19. So half the base times the height would be 19. So let's simplify this equation. I'm going to times everything by 2 to begin with to get rid of this half. So that would be on the left hand side, x plus 6, and then x plus 5. And then on the right hand side, we would have 19 times by 2 is equal to 38. So that's just multiplying everything by 2. Now if we expand our brackets on the left hand side, we get x times x, which is x squared, x times 5, which is 5x, and 6 times x, which is 6x. So that'll be 5x plus 6x. And then we've got 6 times 5, which is plus 30. And then on the right hand side, we've got that's equal to 38. Now let's simplify this. So we'll have x squared plus 11x plus 30 is equal to 38. And we want this to equal 0, so let's take away 38 from both sides. So take away 38 from the left hand side, and let's take away 38 from the right hand side. So on our left hand side, we're going to have x squared plus 11x, and then we had 30, we're taking away 38, so it's going to be minus 8. And then on the right hand side, we had 38, we're taking away 38, that's equal to 0. So we've got x squared plus 11x minus 8 is equal to 0. So now we just need to solve this, and I'm guessing, again, because this worksheet's on the quadratic formula, we're going to be using the quadratic formula. You could try and factorize, it probably won't factorize. You could use completing this square, but in this case I'm going to use the quadratic formula. So a is equal to 1, b is equal to 11, and c would be minus 8, so c is equal to minus 8. So let's substitute those values into the quadratic formula. Remember, the quadratic formula is x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. So let's substitute in our values. So we've got x is equal to, and instead of minus b, that's going to be minus 11 plus or minus the square root of b squared, that's going to be 11 squared, which is 121, minus, and then we've got 4 times a times c. Let's put that in a bracket. 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is minus 8. Close brackets. And that's all divided by 2a, which is 2. So that means we've got x is equal to minus 11 plus or minus the square root of 121 minus, and then in brackets, we've got 4 times 1 times minus 8. 4 times 1 is 4, times minus 8 would be minus 32. Close brackets, and that's all divided by 2. Now we're going to have x is equal to minus 11 plus or minus the square root of. Now we've got 121 minus minus 32. That means we're going to add 32 on, so it's going to be 153 all over 2. Now we can just get our two solutions, that either x is equal to minus 11 plus the square root of 153 over 2, or x is equal to minus 11 minus the square root of 153 over 2. So let's work this out in our calculator. So x is equal to 0.6846 and so on. And then on our right hand side, whenever we work this one out, we're going to get x is equal to, and changing that plus sign to a minus sign, that's going to give us an answer of minus 11.684 and so on. Now if we have a look here at this triangle, the base was x plus 6. Now if we take this value of x and we add 6, it would still be a negative answer. And this length can't be a negative length, so this answer will not work. So that means that this is our solution, that x is equal to, and it doesn't tell us how many decimal places to give it to, so I'm going to give it to 3 decimal places. So it's going to be 0.685 to 3 decimal places, and that's it. Okay, let's have a look at question number 14. So question number 14 says, Jack is solving a quadratic equation in the form x squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And he's got to this point in his working out, which is x equals 5 plus or minus the square root of 53 over 2. And we've been asked to find the values of b and c. Now if we have a look here, we've got it in the form of x squared plus bx plus c. Notice it's just x squared. That means we know already that a is equal to 1 because it's x squared, and that means it's 1x squared, so a is equal to 1. And we've got to find our values for b and c. So let's have a look and see what we've got. So we've got x is equal to 5. Now normally, whenever we're doing this, let's write the quadratic formula down. X is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Now let's just check. We know a is equal to 1, and 2 times a, 2 times 1 is equal to 2, so that's great. We've got the 2, so a is 1. But here, if we focus on this part here, we've got negative b plus or minus, so we've got negative b. And here, Jack's got 5. So that means that b would have had to be negative 5. B would have to be negative 5, because whenever we do negative b, that'll be the minus 5, which would be 5. So that means that b is equal to minus 5. So we've got the values for a and b. Let's write down that value for b in our answer box. So b is equal to negative 5. I'm just going to write that down to begin with. And let's just go up again here. So we've got our values for a and b. Now we need to find the value for c, because that's what we've been asked to find, this value for c. So if we have a look here, with the 2a bit, we know that's equal to 2, so a is equal to 1, so that's fine. If we look at the beginning bit here, we had minus b, and that's equal to 5, so b would have to be minus 5, because minus 5 would be 5. So to find the value for c, we're going to have to focus on what's underneath the square roots. So this b squared minus 4ac is equal to 53. So that means that b squared minus 4ac is equal to 53, because that's what's under the square root sign, that b squared minus 4ac. So we know the value for b is equal to minus 5. We know the value for a, so we can then find the value for c. So let's substitute in the values for a and b and see what we get. So we've got b squared. B is equal to minus 5, so it's going to be minus 5 squared minus, and then in brackets 4 times a, which is 1, times c. And that's equal to 53. So minus 5 squared would be minus 5 times minus 5, which is 25, minus. And then we've got 4 times a times c, that's 4 times 1 times c. 4 times 1 is 4, times c is c, so that's 4c. So minus 4c is equal to 53. So we've got 25 minus 4c is equal to 53. So we just need to solve this equation. I'm going to add 4c to both sides to begin with, so add 4c and add 4c. And whenever I add 4c to both sides of the equation, on the left-hand side, I'm adding it to get rid of it on the left-hand side, so we'll be just left with the 25. And on the right-hand side, we're going to have 53 plus, and then we've got our 4c. Now we want to find out what 4c is, so let's get rid of this 53. So let's take away 53 from both sides. So let's take away 53 and take away 53. 25 take away 53 is minus 28. And on the right hand side, that's going to be equal to 4c. So this is great because now we just need to divide by 4 and divide by 4. And minus 28 divided by 4 will be minus 7, and that's equal to c. So that means that c is equal to minus 7. So that's it. So c is minus 7. So we've got the b is minus 5 or negative 5, and c is negative 7, and that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our last question. So our last question, we've been given this shape. It says the area of the shape below is 100 centimeters squared. So the area of the shape is 100 centimeters squared. And part A says to show that 8x squared minus 15x minus 113 is equal to 0. So, okay, we'll do that. And then part B says to find the perimeter of the shape. So let's start off by doing this part A to begin with. So we need to show that 8x squared minus 15x minus 113 equals 0. So we've been told the area of the shape. We know the area of the shape is 100 centimeters squared. So we've got some algebraic expressions for some of the lengths. So if we find the area of this shape, we know then we can put it equal to 100. And then if we simplify it, we should get this. So let's start by finding the area of the shape. So let's chop it. And I'm going to chop it this way here. And I'm going to call this region A and this region B. So let's find the area of region A and region B and then add them together. So let's start off with region B actually. So to find the area of region B, we just need to multiply these two lengths together. The width of the rectangle times the length of the rectangle. And that will give us the area of the rectangle. So the area of B, so the area would be x minus 4 multiplied by 4x plus 1. And whenever we do that, let's expand this and see what we get. X times 4x is 4x squared. X times 1 would be plus x. And then we've got minus 4 times 4x, that'll be minus 16x. And then finally, minus 4 times 1 would be minus 4. And then if we simplify this, we would get 4x squared. And then we've got x take away 16x. Well, x take away 16x would be minus 15x. And then we've got minus 4. So that would be the expression for the area of this rectangle. It would be 4x squared minus 15x minus 4. So that's the area of this rectangle B. So now let's have a look at rectangle A. So rectangle A. And we want to find the area of rectangle A. Well, we know one of the measurements. We know this is 2x minus 3, but we need to know what to multiply that by. So we need to find this length here. Well, we know the length for the whole shape, that's 3x minus 1. And we've got this length here, which is x minus 4. So we know that this length plus this length would be this length. So if we've got an x, we need to have a 2x here, because x plus 2x is 3x. So that's fantastic. Now let's focus on the numbers. We had minus 4. We're going to add something to it, and we're going to get to minus 1. Well, to get from minus 4 to minus 1, we'd have to add 3. So this must be 2x plus 3. So we've now got the length and the width of this rectangle. If we times them together, that'll be the area of this rectangle. So it's going to be 2x plus 3 multiplied by 2x minus 3. So let's see what we get. 2x times 2x is 4x squared. 2x times minus 3 will be minus 6x. 3 times 2x will be plus 6x. And 3 times minus 3 will be minus 9. Now, if we look at the two middle terms here, we've got minus 6 plus 6, that's going to be 0, so we're going to have 4x squared minus 9. So we've now got the expression for the area of rectangle A, and we've now got an expression for the area of rectangle B. If we add them together, that'll be the expression for the whole area, and we know that's equal to 100. So let's add these two together and see what we get. Well, 4x squared plus 4x squared would be 8x squared. And then it's just going to be minus 15x because this one doesn't have any x's. And then we've got minus 9 plus minus 4. And minus 9 plus minus 4 will be minus 9. Take away 4, which will be minus 13. And that's going to be equal to the area, which is 100. So we now know that 8x squared minus 15x minus 13 is equal to 100. Now we want it to equal 0, so we're going to have to take away 100 from both sides. So take away 100 from the left-hand side and take away 100 from the right-hand side. So on our left-hand side, we're going to have 8x squared minus 15x. Now we had minus 13. If we take away another 100, that's going to be minus 113. And on our right-hand side, we had 100 take away 100 is equal to 0. And that's it. So we've got our equation, our 8x squared minus 15x minus 113 is equal to 0. And that's it. So I've done part A, but I've done it up here. Obviously, if I was doing some paper, we've written it below here. Okay, so that's part A done. Part B. Part B says find the perimeter of the shape. So we want to find the perimeter of this shape. We've got some of the measurements around the sides. We need to find this one here. But we also need to find x. And to find x, we need to solve this equation. So let's solve the equation to begin with. So let's solve this equation. I'm going to solve it here. Normally, I probably would have solved it down here if I had done part A in the right place. But let's solve this equation. So A is equal to 8, B is equal to minus 15, and C is equal to minus 113. And we want to substitute those into the quadratic formula, which is x is equal to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. So let's substitute in the values. So x is equal to minus b. Well, b is minus 15. Minus b would be 15 plus or minus, and then we're going to do the square root of b squared. Well, that's going to be minus 15 squared, so minus 15 squared. And then we've got minus 4ac. So in brackets 4 times a, which is 8, times c, which is minus 113, close brackets, and then just extend our square root sign. And that's all divided by 2a, and a is equal to 8, so 2a would be 16. So now let's simplify this a bit. So x is equal to 15 plus or minus the square root of, and then we've got minus 15 squared. Well, negative times a negative is a positive, so it's going to be 225. Then we've got minus, and then in brackets 4 times 8 times minus 113. So let's do that. 4 times 8 times minus 113 is equal to minus 3,616, close brackets, and that's all divided by 16. So then x is equal to 15 plus or minus the square root of, so 225 minus 3,616 is equal to 3,841 over 16. So we've now got our solutions that either x is equal to 15 plus the square root of 3,841 over 16, or x is equal to 15 minus the square root of 3,841 over 16. Now I've got a feeling this one's not going to work, because in this question it says find the perimeter. It doesn't say find the possible perimeters. So it probably means that one of these two solutions won't work. It'll probably give us a negative length somewhere. So let's look at the first one and see what we get. So here, if we work this out, we get x is equal to 4.810987 and so on. And here, if we work this one out, x is equal to negative 2.9359 and so on. Now if we even just look at this length, if we times this number by 3 and then take away 1, that would be negative and it wouldn't work. So this solution is not going to work. So this is our solution. So that means that x is equal to 4.8109 and so on. Now that's the value for x. We've been asked to find the perimeter of the shape. So let's find an expression for the perimeter of the shape. So let's go back up to the shape. And we want to find an expression for the perimeter. So I'm just going to write here perimeter. It's getting a bit messy here, perimeter. And so this is the perimeter. And let's find an expression for the perimeter. So we need to find this length to begin with. So let's consider the height. So we've got the height of the whole shape is 4x plus 1. We've got this is 2x minus 3. So 2x plus 2x would be the 4x. So it has to have a 2x. And then we've got minus 3. We want to get to 1, so we're going to have to add 4. So this length would be 2x plus 4. So now let's find the perimeter of the shape. So let's deal with the x's to begin with, and let's start here. Let's go around the shape and go back around to there. So 2x plus 2x is 4x, plus 2x is 6x, plus another x is 7x, plus 4x is 11x, plus 3x is 14x. So it's going to be 14x. So that's the x part of the x term of the perimeter. Now let's look at the numbers. So we've got minus 3 plus 3, that's 0, that's great. Plus 4, that's 4. Take away 4, that's 0. Plus 1, that's 1. Take away 1, that's 0. So it would just be 14x. So the perimeter of the shape is 14x. So if we go back down here, we had that x was equal to 4.810987 and so on. And I've still got that on my calculator display. And I'm just going to, because I know the perimeter is equal to 14x, I just need to times that by 14. So if I times that by 14, we get that's equal to 67.35382651 and so on. And that's it. And in our measurements, if we look, our perimeter is measured. Here we've got centimeters. It's going to be measured in centimeters. And so our perimeter is equal to 67.354 centimeters to 3 decimal places to 3 dp. And that's it. And that's it. So these have been the video solutions to the quadratic formula practice questions. I really hope you find this video useful. If you need any extra help on the quadratic formula, if you go to video number 267 on Corporate Maths, there's a dedicated video tutorial there on the quadratic formula. Alternatively, you could scan this QR code. But in this video, we're focused on the video solutions to the quadratic formula. So I hope that you find this video useful. If you have found it useful, please like it and please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you. Cheers. Bye.